So hello everyone. Hello Karen. How are you doing, darling? Oh, you did it. Okay. I can't wait for you to post that mug rug. I would love to see it. St. Patty's Day is right around the corner. So that is a great way to celebrate the holiday. Well, it's not actually a holiday. Celebrate the day. Now, some people do treat it like a holiday, but yeah. Did I leave that over on? I don't even see it, which means it has to be on the table underneath all this junk. So, but we'll talk about what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. Okay. So, to get started, we have this book, and I will keep this on display. I share this book on all of my feeds. This is called Zakasone, and this is by my girl Rashida Coleman Hill. She is a guru in my world. She does a lot around sewing and quilting. And so in this book, there are some quilt and sewing projects. So everything in the book is not a quilt, even though there are some more challenging quilts, if you will, in there. I made this one here this last weekend, and I finished everything but the binding. So I still have to finish the binding on this. And then this one will be done. But this was relatively easy sew. The hardest part was that these are circles and they are a little more difficult to do. It's around the curve. The good thing is around the curve is bias. So it stretches and the fabric kind of fits the curve. So the good thing is you have a template, and all of the templates in her book can be found in the back of the book. So you have all the templates. Some of them have to be blown up so that you can use them. But the great thing is that there are templates in the back of the book. So this is a great resource to have. One of the reasons that I like to have it is if you're working on projects, she gives like how to take care of your fabric, what kinds of pins and needles you should use. She calls them tools and material, your machine feet, everything that you would need to do projects. And what I love about this is that everything that she gives are for your domestic machine. I am using my Husqvarna Viking. So this is my Emerald 116. It is it's a basic machine, really. It's a Viking, so it's not cheap, but it's a basic machine. So there's nothing computerized about it. There is nothing that is something that I could push a button and do. It's like, yeah, you're doing everything yourself. You're going to set it with the dials, the whole nine. But I love this because I can do a lot of quilts on this machine. I do not have to use my computerized machine. I don't have to use my long arm. It's going to be a little bit more work to do it with this machine, but absolutely can be done. And there are tools that you can get for your domestic machines that will help you to do quilting projects. Now, typically I would use, let me pull this one up because it's in the machine. With most of my projects, I do use a 1/4 inch foot, and they come in and look different ways, but this is a 1/4 inch foot that I use. And so this 1/4 inch foot has markings on it to help me with some of the turns and corners that I make. And it has a little guard on the side, that little metal guard right here next to my thumb. And that is where it lets the fabric rest up against in order to guarantee me close enough to perfection for a 1/4 inch. So that's the foot that I typically use whenever I am quilting. This project is going to be quilted, but it is not going to be a quilt. So if you are a person who likes to quilt clothes, if you are a person who likes to quilt bags, if you're a person who likes to quilt quilts or quilted projects, this is perfect because she has you go through the basics of it to create this cute pouch. Now, the only thing this pouch needs is a snap. And I was like, girl, you don't have no snaps. I don't know how that happened. I have snaps, but the snap I have is too heavy for this. So I want to get another snap for it. I want a really light snap to go there, and that will hold that shut. So that's the only thing that this is waiting for, but that's okay because we can still make the rest of this. This is small enough, and I can't give the dimensions because that's in the pattern of the book, but you could look at it and see this is small enough where you could make this from any scrap of fabric or pieces of fabric that you have around the house. This is very simple. This is basic. So my bag makers don't come for me, right? Because we know that there are other ways that we could make this that might be a little bit more practical and maybe a little more cleaner right here around the edges. We also know that there are some changes that we can make to this as well. So she has a flat, and we know that absolutely we could make this more like an envelope. It would be a little more pointed than this, but we could make this an envelope flat. We could make this bigger, and it could be a clutch. So you can hack a pattern and make it any way you like, but it's just the basics that you're practicing. And then when you get down the basics, then you go to the harder projects. Like that's the way I like to think about it. So everything isn't like, oh, this is the best and the end all be all, but this is something that we can do and do quickly. Of course, you know anything that I do. Hey, how are you doing? Is that RV Beads? Yep. How are you doing, darling? So anything that we do, like I said, I try to keep it very easy and simple in some ways, just so that we practice. So if you are doing quilting, the more comfortable you're going to feel with the practice, the better you'll get at it. Okay. So like I said, it's absolutely cute. I would want something to just snap that closed, just because, if you put it in your bag, it's going to open at some point and you may not want whatever's inside of it to spill out or for the contents to come loose. You could do a buttonhole with this and then just attach a button. It doesn't have to be a snap, but somewhere in the abyss of things that I have a snap. Okay. So I'm starting off with a piece of fabric. Now, she calls for a piece of fabric that is a certain measurement. Again, I won't give you those measurements because of the pattern book, but she starts off with a piece of fabric that's a certain measurement, and she suggests that you get a piece of batting that is almost going to be the same length. And it doesn't have to be exact because you can trim this down. I like to start with something that is bigger than what I'm going to finish with. And the reason why is because sometimes when you're quilting, depending on how dense the quilt lines are, then it'll sometimes shrink your fabric. Sometimes your edges will move, and it's just easier to start with something bigger and then to trim it down. Okay. Now, this is a small enough project where this should stick. This batting is regular cotton batting. It's scrap that I had, but you could use fusible fleece. Fusible fleece has a bumpy side. You would just iron that down and it would stay flat, attached. So I don't have that, but what I do have is quilting spray. So I just need a couple sprays because I just want to hold it in place. The rule of thumb is that when you're basting, you start in the middle and you smooth it out. That way, if there are any lumps and bumps, the lumps and bumps will go to your edges and they won't be in the center. Okay. And the basting does just that. It's basting it. It is not meant to be permanent. So the goal is that you're going to quilt this or you're going to do something else to this. If you want this to kind of stay, you're using a whole lot of glue, or you would use fusible fleece. Fusible fleece will still, over time, as you manipulate the fabric, it will separate over time because it's not meant to necessarily be permanent. Okay, so the second thing that we need to decide, like I did here, I decided that I wanted my lines, this is a better way to look at it. I wanted my lines to not only go left to right and top to bottom, I decided I wanted these to go on a diagonal. So I decided for this look, you're going to decide however you want your quilting to go. You're also going to make a decision on how wide you want this to be. So this one is, these are about 2 inches, this line to this line, they're about 2 inches apart, and then this line to this line. They're all about 2 inches apart. So it's about 2-inch space in here. I could make this a 2-inch space. I could make this a 3-inch space, a 4-inch space. You just need to be consistent. I could make it a 1 inch or 1.5 inch. Just know that the closer the spaces are together, the stitches are together, the more rows and columns you're going to have to stitch. You don't have to go in the same direction. You don't have to go in the same direction one side and then the different direction the other way. You could just do all one direction. So I could just go top and bottom all the way through. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. But it's up to you how you want to quilt this. But whatever you do, you could pick a way. I'm doing lines because lines are the easiest thing to do. We can do some sort of stipple or meander. We could do some sort of circle or heart or designs. We could follow the pattern itself and echo around the pattern if that's what we chose to do around this fabric. I'm keeping it simple for today. Again, just beginner, easy, friendly patterns that you could do that are not intimidating. And I think like when I get into the free motion, do it any old kind of way you want, I lose people. So we're going to keep this simple. There's a couple different ways that you can do this, and I need to switch my feet because I don't need this foot right now. I'm going to use a regular foot. I could use a walking foot, but this is small enough that I'm okay using a regular foot. So I'm just going to attach my regular foot here. So in order to start this off, I need a line. I can either use a line that they already have, or I can create a line. If I create a line, I'm going to use my ruler, line that line up, and we know it's already on a line, but let's just say, and I will take a marking tool and mark the line. Then I can move over how many ever inches I want to move over, and I can mark another line. And I'm going to go all the way through until I've marked all the lines. That's one way of doing it. So I can use a marking tool and I can mark the fabric. This is Tailor's chalk. What this will do is it will sit on your fabric until you wash it out. Sometimes it'll rub off. So I wouldn't do a whole lot of marking with chalk or specific pens that come off with rubbing or friction, because by the time you manipulate this with your hands, your gloves, on your machine, next thing you know, some of those lines are gone. So you drew all those lines in and you don't need them. So typically I will draw one set of lines and then draw another set of lines after I've quilted that. And then at least that way I can still see the lines. Another way to do this is you could use your foot. So your foot has so much space in between it from side to side. So you could decide that if that foot is 1 inch wide, if I take it from the foot over from the needle so many inches, that would be 1/2 inch. I could take it over a whole inch from it. So I could use the guide from my foot as just that edge from that foot to be the guide for my lines. That's up to you. You could also use a walking foot. And so this is a walking foot. And I would have to get up to get the piece, but there's a little piece that goes in here. And what it does is it sticks out your walking foot, and you can make a determination on how wide you want your lines to be, and then just use that guide to follow them. Because this is a small area, I'm not going to use a walking foot, and I'm not going to use that guide because I don't need them to be that wide. Okay. So I have thread in my machine. I'm going to determine my stitch length because my feed dogs are up. That means that it's going to ride through with my fabric. I'm not guiding this with my hands. The feed dogs, which are typically what we use when we sew, are already here at the bottom. I am going to line up this with the first line just to give myself that first line. Make sure that my thread does not bump back out because that's what it wants to do. And I am going to pay attention to that line. Okay. And because we're being lazy, we're going to use our paper scissors. Okay. So you can see that first line, it's on the black right here where my finger is. The first line is done. And you can see it on that side as well. Now I'm going to move it over to the edge of my foot. Again, I will predetermine where my needle is going to be. I'm going to line my foot right up with the edge. And I'm going to sew the second line. I'm not holding my fabric tight. I just want to use my two hands to help guide it. Then I'm going to flip this around. It'd be nice if I went up to make that loop. And I'm going to start the next one. 1, 2, 3. And if I just twist and turn this, the good thing about this is that I won't need to use a lot of thread. Otherwise, if I do it where I pull it out and I do it again and I pull it out and I do it again, what's going to happen is I'm going to have a lot of thread tail on the end, and I don't want all that thread tail. And again, think about this as being your quilt, opposed to or your quilted project, your bag, something bigger. Once you get the hang of doing this, whether you're following lines, whether you're following the foot, whether you're following the guide, it just goes very quickly. And I'm just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I'm doing one end, and this is small enough where it'll fit under my throat. So I'm not worried about the excess going under the throat. I could have started this in the other direction and it would come out, but you'll see it's coming out this way. But then because of the way I'm twisting and turning it, it's also coming in towards that throat. Now this is just a pencil case. If I wanted to, and because it's live and it wants you to see the quilting, I'm using white. But the reality of the situation is I could use any color that I wanted. So it could be silver, it could be gray, it could be black. It could be pink because there's some pink in here. It could be blue. So you're making a decision how far out you want this to go. Hey, Shamir, how are you doing, love? And if those lines get a little wonky, again, this is going to come from practice. So you are not expecting perfection as you go. But I'm using my foot as the guide. So I'm watching the edge of the foot, and I'm watching where the lines are to the edge of the foot. One of the things that I do like about going in opposite directions instead of going in the same direction, your needle sometimes wants to push the fabric towards you. And when you're going in the same direction and not flipping it like I am, all your fabric is pushing that way. And sometimes you'll get ripples. So going in opposite directions helps your fabric to kind of straighten back out again, and it avoids the ripples. And again, I'm only going to go in one direction. If I had been smart, I would have went a long way. It still would have taken almost the same amount of time, but I wouldn't have as many rows and or columns, depending on how you're looking at it, to go. And remember, I only did one side, so I still have to do the other side. But again, these lines don't take long, and I didn't have to do them this thin. I just wanted to. So because I wanted to do them this thin, that's why they're as thin as they are. So you can decide how long it takes. For how thick you want your lines to go. Now somewhere in there, it went a little wonky on me, but again, that's okay. I'm okay with it. I think I have like a scoop left. I probably have like 2 rows left that I could do, because we don't waste any fabric. Okay, but we'll pull that so you can see it so far. And then we can show it to you from the back. Okay, I'm not doing a quilt sandwich, so this is only the top and this is the batting. So there's no back to this, because the way that we're creating the pencil case, it is going, all the edges are going to be encased inside of it. So we don't want to use bias binding around that, but that would be one way where you could put the whole thing together. So I could have done the front, the back, and then when I folded it up, it would have given me these edges, and then I just could have put bias binding around them and finished them off that way. So again, like when you're thinking about this, you're thinking about what your end project is going to look like and what you want to be bothered with. I don't want to be bothered with binding, so I opted not to do it that way. And her pattern didn't call for it that way, but again, the pattern is a guide. The pattern is not the end all be all. So you are not married to doing it the way that the creator of the pattern created it. You use that pattern. Once you bought it, it's yours to decide how you want it to use. So I want to use the pattern as an inspiration, not necessarily as the way it has to be done. And I think for her, for Rashida Hill's example, I think what she did was she didn't use lines. Like, I'm deciding to use lines. I want to say that she used a regular piece of quilted fabric. Oh, just made it right. She used a regular piece of quilted fabric to do this. So again, that's totally up to you which way you want to go. And I'm running out my bobbins. So just so you can see, I have different color bobbins, but I could absolutely use, I was using white, so I'm going to use the white. I can use the back of the blue because, yeah, sometimes I need to run the bobbins out. Sometimes I have a lot of white bobbins and they don't necessarily help my project when they are half full. So I run them out and then I will make all new fresh white bobbins. So that way that I know when I'm starting to piece a quilt together, I'm not worried about running out of the bobbins quickly because they were only half round. Yes, so I always play bobbin chicken, right? That is my middle name. But today, like I said, when I work on small projects help me to get rid of those bobbins. And a lot of times, different from when people sew clothing, depending on the project that you're working on, you could use a different colored bobbin thread in your projects and nobody would know. So I absolutely could use white on top and I could use black on the bottom of this. I could have used blue. I wouldn't want to use red because sometimes if your tension isn't right, the bobbin will peek through and you just don't want those little red bumps peeking through. Black, you're not really going to see it too much, or it might look intentional. The red won't look so intentional. So the one thing about the walking foot is that your fabric doesn't tend to want to go all over the place for you to have to hold it still. So usually because there are feed dogs on the bottom and the top, they tend to feed your fabric through evenly and they help to keep your fabric straight when it's going from back to front, from front to back. This process can be done on fabric. I know that Nikki on Saturday is working on a bag. And if she does the quilting on the bag, she is going to use some sort of vinyl. And this process can be done with vinyl as well. Depending on how thick your batting is, will depend on how bumpy, if you will, how much your fabric will rise in between the loft, in between the stitches. I think I have about 2 or 3 more rows. But again, she'll probably keep it simple. She's not going to go this thin. She'll probably go a little bit thicker if she does it. But there are a bunch of bags that have quilting in the bags. And you can absolutely add that element to a bag. You can absolutely add that element to your clothing. Especially like jackets, because the batting will help to keep you warmer in that jacket. leave that right there. Okay, so then you can see, and it almost looks like it was meant to be that way, right? So you see the lines, they're here, and you see the lines, they're here. What I like about these is that also when you go to fold it, they're going to naturally want to fold on the stitches. So they just kind of lay flatter when you put everything together. So I do like how that looks. I'll make some decisions. You can see if I go this way, right, it kind of hides that little line in here, the way that I cut this fabric. So if I move it over top of that, it just kind of has a different type of finish, and it kind of focuses on this design. And if I fold it over this way, it gives that little band effect, right? So it just depends on which way you want to go. Okay. Now, I need to press my lining. So the lining is next. So you have a piece of top fabric for your for this project. This with any bag that you would be doing. So there would be a top. There is some sort of batting. All this is just scrap that I have laying around that I could make something cute out of. So these are cute little pouches that can be made for either yourself, for someone in your family, just to hold items to sell. That's up to you. Okay, so I'm going to lay everything together because I'm going to cut everything together. And I'm going to cut this according to the measurements that I was given. And again, my lining right now is not the same size because I was like, yeah, I knew that I was going to trim the top part with the batting on it. So I didn't have to have it to be the same size, but before I stitch everything together, it all needs to be the same size. And then we'll come up here and we'll stitch that even on that side. I am using my mat as a guide to line everything up. Okay, so everything top and bottom is together. And then we'll do our sides. And I'll just slide that down a little bit beyond that first number, just so I can get a good clean corner and edge. Oops. And again, I went bigger than what her measurements were because I knew I had to clean this up. And this would happen with any quilted project. So I don't care how good of a quilter you are, you're gonna have some excess. You're gonna have some edges that are not gonna be clean when you finish. And the easiest way is just to kind of clean everything up. Sometimes we call it squaring up. While I'm here, I'm going to add my pins. The pins are going to help everything stay in place. My right sides are together, so I don't have to flip it. If your right sides weren't together, you would just have to flip it over. That's why I have 20,000 rotary cutters. I have 20,000 pairs of scissors and I have 20,000 rotary cutters because I can never find them when I need them. And the great thing is that you could, like, this could be any project, right? This could be any project. And so for my bag people that are on, like, imagine, right, that this was the beginning of a wallet, or this was the beginning of a bag. This is like that same basic process. So working through the process of putting the lining down, you know how you would sew around the 3 edges, you would turn it out. This could be a, what do you call that? A book cover. Like, this could be a ton of things, but what we practiced and what was key was practicing that quilting of the thing, the quilting of the fabric, however we decided to quilt it. The closer together that you quilt, it depends on the fabric. We talk about like scrim and things like that when we're talking. What happens is that if it were like a blanket type quilt, right? Something you would throw over you, the further away your stitches are, when you go to wash and wear it, there's a lot of pulling, and sometimes your batting will wear thin. So the closer together they are, depending on the type of batting you have, the more pulling you can do and the less wear you'll have. So usually cheaper batting, usually you have to do closer stitches. Usually with a stronger batting, usually costs a little bit more money, you can do stitches that are a little bit farther away. Usually they'll give you the directions and they'll tell you about how wide you can go with your stitches when you're quilting. This is scrap, it didn't matter. So I always have a bunch of scraps left over, or I buy them. And I do that because it's easier to use scraps up. And I have enough small projects where I can do that. I need to switch my foot because she does call for a 1/4 inch all the way around. No harm or foul, depending on your dimensions or what you're making. You could absolutely make this a 1/2 inch. We're gonna go all the way around and leave an opening. I left that opening, I'm going to leave it at the top this time. I left it on the side the last time and that drove me crazy. Need to move my needle over a little bit because my foot does not have a big or wide opening. I'm going to back stitch. And the reason I'm back stitching is because when I go to open this, there's going to be some stretch, some pull to birth it, and I don't want my I don't want the seam to break. I don't want that thread to break. So I'm going to go all the way around this, a 1/4 inch. Thank you for tapping the screen and getting us to 11,000. Thank you. Got one more stitch in there to get to the corner. Okay. Where are my principles? Tell my principal on live, go to bed. Okay, one more. Turn that. You're going to leave yourself enough of an opening to turn everything through. So it's going to go all the way around. I left this much of an opening. So I like to live dangerously. and I'm going to cut. When I cut, I like to shave a little bit off of each of the edges and then hit that corner without breaking it. And so that helps the corner to be a little bit more square. This is where you take your time. But I don't have to cut off all the excess, but I like to get real close. And I can do this because this is going to be stitched down, and I don't have to worry about stress on that seam because we're going to sew those edges anyway. Okay. Those are my scrap bucket. I'm going to come in here and then we're going to do what is called birthing. I like chopsticks. Chopsticks, for the most part, have blunt ends, so then that way I don't have to worry about poking through my fabric. I go to the farthest most corner and I want to poke those through. I like to use a little bit of my nail as well. And then this is where we play the game of pulling it through. If the hole is big enough, you don't have to fight. If the fabric is flexible enough, you don't have to fight. If you're using vinyl, or if you decided that you wanted it to be a little bit more stiffer and you use some sort of stabilizer, you may have a little bit of a fight ahead of you, but no problem. I'll come in here with my chopstick and poke those corners out. Hello, 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 everyone. We are just doing a quick palette cleanser for me. And this is a cute little quilted pouch, if you will. But just practicing my quilting because, first of all, some of us have a lot of projects that need to be quilted. And then second of all, just because I've been working on a lot of quilted projects in February, and I wanted to make sure that, you know, kind of cut myself a little bit of a break. Now, I could be cutting myself a little bit of a break with this dress I was supposed to make, but that was too much leg right. Okay, you could use a pen. I use clips. And then we're going to take it to our machine and press it. Take it to our iron, and press it. I don't know why I like to say my machine, like my sewing machine presses. Okay, so hopefully everyone is doing well on a Tuesday. I like to roll my seams. So I'm kind of pushing them towards the lining, the outside, just to kind of help those lay flat. And then I can roll them back into place. It helps to make sure that I don't have any folds in there because I do want this to lay as flat as possible. Again, with most quilting projects, I don't usually do a lot of ironing. I do more pressing. Okay. So again, thank you for everyone for joining me. This is and should be, right, a quick project. Especially since I don't have to put the snaps on it because somebody has to go upstairs and find those snaps. I'll find them like 2 seconds after I get off. This end is a little easier to roll just because it was shorter. And then let me roll this in. And I can just do this with my fingers. I don't need anything fancy. somebody's running them over her clips, like her clips can't be melted. And I do want to get right over the clip just to hold that edge down. Just in case when I go to take the clip off, it'll be folded nice and neatly, and I don't have to worry about that end popping out on me. Okay. And again, this is an easy project. This is like one of those ones that I get done quickly. It's like, wow. So I will share, she has, which are the vein of my existence, there are hexies that come with it. And the hexies go like this. As you can see, I'm not doing those, right? I would have added these, but I forgot to mention them. I wasn't planning on adding them. So they go here like that. And it's just like an added extra element. I have these cut out because I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to do it with something else, but I decided not to do them. But the hexies are there. I felt like the hexies were going to fight against the pattern here, so I didn't want to go with it. But the hexies, they tell you to use cardstock. My cardstock is valuable to me, but these edges all get turned under towards the paper, and you would hand stitch them. So you already know, to know me is to know I ain't hand stitching nothing. Now I do hand stitch, like I can't say nothing, right? Because there are times when I can't, like there's no way I can avoid hand stitching. But yeah, all those cute quilts that I see that people do, and they absolutely do this by hand. They take their hexies on trips with them, and they stitch all this mess by hand. I'm not doing that. So I can press each one of these corners down. Just in case you get the book and you're interested, I do want to go over that part and just show you what I would do. Like they tell you this is how they say to do it, but this is how I do it, right? And I wouldn't be doing a million of these where I would be worried about burning my fingers. I could also use a stiletto. But I'm not going, like I said, I'm not going to put this on this one because I just felt like it was going to fight the design. But I do want to do it for a different one without the design. So I will do another one. So I'm just turning under each edge, and the paper is my guide. I cut about a 1/4 inch all the way around the paper. And then if I can lay this down, it's not gonna let me lay it down until I do what I need to do. But you'll get like this cute little hexie. This is the raw edge underneath. I would either have a glue stick, or I would have my trusty dusty Elmer's glue. Because I told you I'm not doing anything that requires me using a needle and thread. And then I could just use my glue stick or my Elmer's glue just to kind of touch the edges. And then I would lay each of those back down. Just like we did with the binding when we did this before. And just use my iron to set it. I knew that was going to happen. Let me move this here. Can we get it right on the first try? Okay. Then I can use my paper again, right? So I'm not pulling it out. Got it. And then we'll just press that. If there needs to be a little bit more glue, I can do it, but for the most part, I can usually just about get it on the first try. Okay. There we go. So now you have the hexie, right? And with the exception of that little string that's hanging there, this is what it looks like on this side. Again, we would have stitched all that together. We're not doing that with by hand, but you would have the hexie, and then the hexie sits. And again, I don't like this because it's going to fight against this. I just think like even if it were plain, it wasn't going to work, but I did want to show you how she has 3 hexies that go on her pouch. You could add that element there. I will do that for something else, just so you can see it, but I just wanted to keep this plain. Okay. So once those are there, the placements of the hexies are what determines how far up you fold your bag. So because we are not using that, we're going to make some executive decisions about how we fold it. If you needed your clip, you would, your snap, you would add your snap. Again, I'll add that later. I'm going to use my board just to measure and make sure that the tips and points are where they need to be, so they're even on both sides, because sometimes spatially I can't see that. I'm going to line up those edges. Again, you're going to make a decision. I started off with white thread, but if I feel some kind of way, I could absolutely use black. Instead of the white to close this up, but I'm just going to use the white. Okay, so it'll look like this. This part up here is that edge that I left open. Her directions say to whip stitch it closed. I already told you I'm not doing that by hand, and I will capture that anyway when I stitch all the way around. So she has you stitch all the way around the sides. You're not going to do the bottom. The bottom is going to remain rounded. So we'll take this back to our machine. Now, when I did this, to be honest with you, I didn't want to start in this corner. I felt like there was a lot of bulk there, so I wanted to end there. So I did start up in a corner, and then I went all the way around on one side, and then I went down on the other side and called it an afternoon. Again, depending on where you want your stitches, it's going to depend on how you do that. You want to go about 1/8 of an inch from that edge. Now, there is a lot of bulk, so depending on the type of machine you have, that's going to depend on how the type of needle that you're using right now, and it's also going to depend on how fast you go. So if you're using a domestic machine, you may not want to be speed racer on this part. There's nothing wrong with taking your time, because you've got to go through a whole bunch of layers. Now, I also don't want to go slow, really slow, because again, you're going through a whole bunch of layers, especially when you get down to the double part. Now, if there was a lot of wear and tear on this bag, like let's say I was using this as an envelope bag, I might run over it a couple times or do some little reinforcement type of stitch where those ends meet, just because I'm going to be putting my hand in it and opening it up a lot. When I get down to the end, I'm going to back up just a little bit and then run it off. Okay, if I did that right, I should capture that end. So everything should be in there. And you can see how you can see a lot of the inside of that lining. You could really like push and press a little bit to get that on the inside. I'm not necessarily worried about this. This is a pencil pouch. This is a pouch that somebody's going to use. So we are absolutely not going to sit there and try to make like it perfect, because nobody's going to look at it that close. Awesome. Awesome, 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 RV. I think it's a really great book. All of her pattern pieces, she does have a QR code for them, so that you can get them in PDF form rather than making copies from the book. So you can absolutely download them and then use them that way if that's easier for you. Again, can't show you that because that would be exposing the pattern to you, and I am good for copyright issues. Okay, and again, we're just taking our time. I like it that like she has little bags, she has pillows, she has quilts, so it gives you an opportunity to practice a couple different things that you could use around the house. Placemats, she does napkins in this. It's really nice book. And so I know we are focusing in for the Black Sewing Network for the month of March. We're looking at women. And so who a better person to use than Rashida Coleman Hill, because I can do a variety of things. Okay, so we'll clip that end off. She also has like a line of fabric through Ruby Star Society, if you want to check that out as well. So that's the inside, right? This is the back. These are the sides. And again, all I need to do right now, which we're not going to do here, is to add, we know we'll fold this in half. We'll mark the center. We will mark halfway, like about an inch down, or what, a quarter inch, or whatever the direction is for where that will go. We will mark that. We'll put it over here. We'll mark it down here. We'll mark everything, and then we'll have a snap, right? But we'll add that snap later. But again, look how cute that pouch is. So it's just a cute little pouch. And here is the front of that. And then here is the back of it. And, you know, like what I like about this is that it's a good scrap buster. So it's something cute that I can make for, let's say, my students. They can put their little unmentionables in here, not the soiled ones, but they can put, you know, what they need for school. They can take it out. It's a cute little pouch to carry down the hallway with them. for some of the adults, this is a cute little pouch that the adults can use. Like I said, you can add that little snap there. But again, same idea, right? You could have, for those people that are bag people, we could have connected the parts and added a zipper. If you decided you didn't want to snap, right, you could stitch this down. And then you could just have this as an opening. And then it just looks closed whenever you carry it. So you could, like I said, you can make this any way that you like. That's totally up to you. But this is, like I said, just a really cute way to practice your quilting, especially if you're doing lines. You can do hatches. You could do like cross. It is totally up to you how you want to make this function. Like I said, you can change this edge. It could be rounded up top, so it doesn't have to be square. It could be pointed like an envelope. And we would, you know, have cut it this way, but it could look like that. And then the snap could go right here. So, or the button. So you can make this any way that you want. So once you get the hang of making the first one, absolutely hack it up. I could blow this up so I could take the measurements, because it really doesn't matter what the measurements are, right? So you could decide how big of a pouch you want it to be, and you can make it bigger. So then you could slide your laptop into it. And this could absolutely be your laptop case. So this could be a laptop case. This could be whatever you want it to be. But we're starting off with this cute size that comes with the book. So again, this is Akasone. I don't think that there's anything on that page that I can't show. Yeah. So one page has something I can't show, right? Because it has the pieces. So I can show you this side. So you could see, this is the pouch she had. Here is her snap. And you can see where those little honeycombs are right here that she used. So she used the same color when making those. And let me see if I can do this. You can see them a little bit better here. And so right down here at the bottom, you can see how she has it. So it folds over onto part of it, because that's going, this is one, this is the second one down at the bottom that's in half, and then it's on the back. There's a whole piece. But she adds those pieces on there. Like I said, for me, I just felt like it was going to fight against the pattern of this, so I didn't want to use it. And again, I didn't want to hand stitch nothing. Now, she hand stitched hers here. I wouldn't do that. I would use like 1/8 of an inch, and I would just applique that all the way around. So that's how I would do it, because I'm not going to do anything by hand. But like I said, I will make one with these on there just so that you can see it. So I just need to find some plain fabric, which I'm looking at. So I absolutely could make another one and add those on there so that you can see those as well. But yeah, if I'm just making a palette buster and I have printed fabric, I'm not doing all the bells and the whistles if I don't have to, especially after I spend so much time doing the quilting on this. Yeah, we're not doing all that. So this is, like I said, again, this is really cute. Thank you for joining me tonight, because I kept this real simple and real easy today. Yes, I did. So again, if you go back and you look at the video, we went over how to quilt this. And so we used the lines. We used simple little lines. We used our sewing foot to help us create the lines. We can draw the lines again if you choose and make them wider. I use tailor's chalk, but you can use any sort of marking pen where the marks come off. So I did this one with these lines. I drew these lines, and you could still see some of the marks from the teller's chalk. They're eventually coming off, but you can see some of the marks. So I did them this way with this one. So you can decide, let's turn them both the same way. You can decide which way you want it to look. They look differently, but they both look good regardless of the way that you do it. I could have done a stippling free motion, but I like to stick with my lines because I'm really trying to get better at that. And then I can show them to you this way. Again, all I need is the snap on the front of these. Believe it or not, these are the same exact fabric. That's one of the things I like about Ankara fabric, is that no matter how you cut it, you almost get like two different patterns based off of how you cut this. So I do like this way. Thank you, Shamir. I like those diamonds too. I do. But this is just one piece of fabric. Actually, it was a scarf my cousin gave me. She was like, I'm not using this. Yes, we can repurpose that scarf. So we repurposed them into these pouches. So I just need the snaps for them. But once everything was quilted, then we cleaned everything up. So we call that square up. Some people call it square up, but we just kind of cleaned those edges up so that everything was cleaned up. We made sure that our lining and our front of the quilt or the quilted piece were the same size. So I just laid one on top of the other, cut them out with the same dimensions. If it was a little bit off, no problem. The bag would just been a little bit shorter. So I can do it that way. And then once I did that, we sewed stitch all the way around, left an opening. We birthed it, turned it inside out. We then made a decision on how high up to go in folding this over. We stitched from the bottom all the way around to the other bottom. But like I said, I just started up in a corner and brought it down because there is a lot of bulk on this side. And I wanted to be able to make sure that my machine got here and then hit this corner as neatly as it could. So I didn't want to start in the corner. So I decided to start up at the top and work my way down. So then once we finished that, we add the snap and boom, we're done. So thank you for joining me this evening. This was a quickie. I will be thinking about what I will be doing. I'm thinking about possibly doing another quilt and splitting it. We will see. If I do that, I may split it between 2 days just to get it done. So I may do some prep work the first week, put it together the second week like I did with Love Note. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. Thank you for tapping the screen and getting us, where did we get to? 26.5K. Y'all were awesome today. Thank you for the taps. Again, thank you for talking and for joining me. And hopefully I'll see you next Tuesday here at 9 o'clock on the Tickety Talk, even though some people say I need to be somewhere else. But that's beside the point. Have a good one.